Welcome to Spiritual Changemakers, the podcast that guides you through tough times with practical tools and inspiring stories. I'm Andreea Thomas, your host and the Sacred Transitions Coach. Join us as we hear from spiritual changemakers who have connected with their higher power and overcame adversity. Whether you are navigating a difficult transition or seeking to deepen your spiritual practice, our podcast provides guidance to help you find magic in the change. Come on this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation with us and unlock your potential to become your best self. Welcome to a new podcast episode on Spiritual Changemakers. I'm excited today to announce a new guest that we have, Kevin. And what we are going to discuss about today is how do you heal the masculine within men and women, and how do you even know when you operate from that place? So I'm excited to have Kevin as a guest. And who is Kevin? Kevin is a transformational and a life coach and mentor. And he's specializing mainly in helping men become the best version of themselves. And he's focusing mainly on life transitions, overcoming self-doubt, limiting beliefs, and just breaking free from self-limiting behaviors. Kevin provides a very safe space and an open space for men to be vulnerable and authentic. And I'm so excited to have you. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So we're going to make sure we are going to make the most out of it, and we are going to create a very profound and beneficial conversation for you guys. And Kevin, before we dive deeper into this topic and into learning more about yourself, I would love to hear from your own life experience what spirituality means to you.
What spirituality means to me, that's a really good question because I've had to learn a lot about it. And I think the simplest way that that I've learned it over the last little while is your truest self. I don't know if you've heard of the capital S self, but it's like that self that's so deep inside of us. And if anyone's talking about God or Jesus or Buddha, it's all inside of us. And that to me is the true self. So spirituality is connecting to that deepest part of ourselves, that true self. So we truly know who we are and who we want to be and how we want to show up in the world and what it feels like to be that truest self. I guess in the simplest terms, that's what it means to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And would you tell us about your story and what made you passionate about the fact that you are helping mainly men to heal their masculinity, to be vulnerable, to show their emotions? What got you onto this path?
hmm It was my own journey and the challenges that I was facing and the struggles that I was going through and the mistakes that I was making and everything. I did a lot of things right. And I don't like to talk about all of the negativity and the struggles and the challenges that I had, but those are what I reflect back on as the ways that I recognize that I wanted to ask myself those questions of why am I doing these things? Why am I saying this? Why am I reacting like this? And why am I thinking these thoughts? Just reflecting back on that and asking those questions of why and wanting to get the answers, because there was, in a lot of ways, I was very successful for what society believes in success. I made a lot of money. I was making almost $200,000 a year in my corporate job as a manager. I had an ownership stake in a business. I had a really nice house. I had a family with 2 kids and we went on vacations and I had all of the stuff that society says means that you're successful and you're supposed to be happy and fulfilled and it's what you live for. But I wasn't feeling those things. And in my marriage, we've all heard the songs, right? Like about the greatest love and the greatest connection. And it's so unconditional and there's absolutely nothing like it. We've watched the movies, we've read the poems and the books all about this. And I'm like, I don't understand. I don't have that. And why is it that we're fighting all the time, and I'm struggling with trying to connect, and my thoughts are creeping elsewhere to where I'm going, is this really what I want? How do I get out of this? Now I feel like I'm stuck. I don't want to be away from my kids half the time. Like those thoughts, but I'm like going, my needs aren't getting met. I want this. I want to be loved, and I want to be accepted, and I want to be appreciated for who I am, not just for what I do. So it was reflecting in all of those examples, those thoughts, those feelings, the emotions, and tapping into that and going, I don't know what to do. And hitting what I like to call is my rock bottom. Having it all was my rock bottom.
Wow.
Mhm.
And what was that pivotal moment for you? Because you said you had everything from the outside, from the societal standpoint, an amazing job, the way where you were earning a lot of money, a
Mhm.
family, a wife. What was that pivotal moment for you where you're like, I have to make a shift, I have to change something?
I'd been on a spiritual awakening journey for about 5 years prior to the moment that I had my big pivot. So, in 2013, I went and saw for the first time an energy healer, and she was a spiritual medium. And I went in with all of these questions going like, how does this work? And what is she going to say? And what's going to happen? I was just so open to it because I was living this life where I'm like, I feel numb. I'm I have so much great things, but I'm like, it's not filling me up. I went and talked to this lady, and right away she just opened my mind to. She said some things to me that I was like, oh man, there's no way that she could have known that. I got goosebumps thinking about it. Yeah, she said some things to me that literally changed my life in a span of 5 minutes. And
Wow.
from that moment on, I wanted to be a better person, and that's what I set out to do. So I started taking care of myself and started running and getting active. And that felt really good physically. And I was like, oh man, when I'm out running, my head is clear. I'm connecting with nature and the energy, and I'm the sights and the sounds and the animals. And it was just like, it was amazing. But then I'd go back to my life and be like, oh, I still have these relationship problems. I'm still like unfulfilled in my job. I'm going to this job that literally just drains me every time I go. But when I ran, it was like, oh, I felt so good. So I was like, that's when the more I opened myself up, and the more that my mind and my heart started to expand, the more that I realized that changes needed to be made. But I didn't know how to do that until I met somebody. And it was like this totally random weekend where I was at a golf tournament, and I played in this golf tournament for many years, and I met someone and we had this conversation, and the conversation it was so easily in flow, and I just felt safe to be myself and to share for the first time ever. And with this conversation with her, she was the same way. She shared with me her life. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I know that I've never felt anything like it before. And I don't know if maybe it's not the right thing for me to do, or the right or wrong thing. I don't know exactly, but I've never felt this way before. And that's when I knew that I needed to make a change. And I went back and had the conversation with my wife and said that I needed to make a shift. And that was the beginning. That was like the beginning of me hitting that rock bottom moment and starting to really look at myself and go, how can I be the best version of myself for me, and not have all of the things that I've been going through and challenged with and struggling with bleed into my children going forward, right?
Such a powerful story. And I also, where it takes me, you just shared that. So you met someone while you were still with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that must have been a very hard because emotionally, probably you were not as invested anymore with your wife because you were not happy. But saying the societal standpoint, moral, and all these things, it must have been very hard. So I'm curious, how did you navigate it? that situation from, especially from the emotional standpoint?
Yeah, it was, and it still is extremely hard. That was 5 years ago now. And by that point in time, I felt like I had done everything that I knew how to try and make things work and make things better. Growing up, I was insecure, I was overweight, and I didn't have that love for myself. And I was looking for it in outside sources. I would say most of my life, almost all of my life, and trying to find that and not receiving it, I just felt there was something wrong with me. So when I started to take care of myself, take care of my body, and started to transform physically, like I lost 50 pounds and was the best shape of my life. But then my relationship started to get worse. And then, but being, I believe I do attribute it to me opening my heart up and opening my soul. And that spiritual journey, that awakening from that one meeting was the beginning of that. And opening that up, everything just started to feel a lot deeper. That's when I started to recognize how unhappy I was in my job and how unhappy I was in my relationship, though I didn't have the courage and the strength yet to navigate that in a way that I would have been proud of with that, without that self-love and that respect for myself and secure saying, you know what, I'm not happy. I'm not being treated very well and I don't deserve that. So I'm going to walk away and do it in a way that society would say is more honorable or whatever they would say, right? At that point, I knew that I hadn't felt that way in a long time, ever. And I wasn't willing to walk away from that. So doing that, yeah, I sacrificed my reputation. I sacrificed everything because that's how I felt inside, but I never told anybody.
And
And
I
that
want
was,
to honor that so much. I want to
Mhm.
honor that so much because I would say this is what it means being spiritual and living your true authentic self and walking the path that feels true to you, despite the fact that from the society's eyes and worlds and so on, it's gonna look bad because at the end of the day, no one lives your life. No one is going to understand fully what it is that you are going through. Only you are the only one that can make the best decision for himself. And like this story took me back to where after my partner transitioned on the other side, not long after, I would say it was just not long after I met a man. And I was at the point where I'm like, no, there is no point, no way that I will have anything with this man because what would everyone say? What are my kids? What is the society? And it's just not right. I was judging myself so harshly, but this man came and showed up in my life with a reason to bring joy, to bring happiness and to hold me. Because at that moment I needed to be held. And I ended up giving that opportunity to the man, and we had a short relationship. But what I had to go through and what I had to overcome in that moment, it was my biggest fear of judgment, my biggest fear of judgment from my community, from my society. And I remembered, like, I was sitting and asking myself two things. I'm like, I either can hide this and just not tell anyone, or I'm just going to share this with all of my friends that I care about in the society and just share my truth with them. Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? And then I told myself I want to be truthful. I want to share my truth. And if they are not going to accept me, if they are not going to accept my truth, then if they're not truly my friends, or we are not meant to be in each other's life. And I took the chance of being rejected because this is what we do when we live in our own truth, despite of what the society is telling us. My biggest fear was rejection. Which one was yours, Kevin, at that time?
Yeah, the same, rejection, abandonment, right? Yeah.
Yes. And once I shared it with all of my friends, what I realized is that all their responses were that they are so happy for me. That's it, that they are immensely happy for me. And I realized that all that fear of judgment, it was just my own judgment. No
Mhm.
one's else's, just mine.
100%. Yeah.
And this is where I want to remind people that it's so important when you go through big shifts, to big changes, to remember to give yourself the love and compassion, because we are our worst critics.
Absolutely.
And
No, that's right.
you shared that you have no love for yourself. And would you say that showed up because you were unhappy? Yes, you were unhappy in your life, no matter if the external success was there, but the happiness, the internal happiness was not. So you said you have no love for yourself, and because of that, you were overweighted.
Yeah, like I was overweight most of my life. Yeah, right up until I was mid 30s, and I didn't realize that it was that I didn't know how to love myself. And that's, I think that there's so many of us out there that don't even know what that is. We hear people talking about all the time is, yeah, you need to learn how to love yourself. The most important thing is self-love and self-care. And that's, it's so different for everybody. People can think that they're loving themselves, but that's not self-love. I would have said that I was doing a lot of things because I love myself. But I was, what it turns out in reflection, and now that I look back from a different perspective, I'm like, no, I was actually doing all the things that everyone else loved, but because I loved them seeing happy for me doing that with them, that made me happy. That that people pleaser, that role,
Mhm.
it's that math, right? I'm going to do something that makes you happy. In turn, that makes me happy. But if I continue to keep doing that and you're not happy anymore, I'm not getting that reaction or the feeling from it, now I become angry and resentful. And that's ultimately, that was the demise. The more that I kept doing, the less that I was receiving. And the less that I received, the more resentful I came. And that's when I started to turn that on myself, going, oh, well, maybe I'm not good enough. Or maybe I don't look good enough, or I'm not attractive enough. And that's why our relationship's going south, or that's why we're not having sex or being intimate. Maybe that's the problem. When I changed that and it still wasn't happening, I was like, well, now what? Now what do I do? And looking back too, there's things that I can say that I would change. Would I go outside my marriage? I can say that I wish that I wouldn't have done that. Would I have went back and had stood up for myself and had those conversations and say, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. This is what my challenges are. Let's get some help and support and work through those together. And if you're not willing to do that with me, then that's okay too. Then we're going to be able to move forward and do whatever we need to do for ourselves. But I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have the courage. I didn't have the strength and the will to do that because I'd never done that before. I had always been that people pleaser, that nice guy that just wanted to be liked and loved by everyone. But it was because I was doing everything that everyone else wanted, not what I wanted. In turn, I was manipulating them just as much as I felt bad, my own fault. It's really difficult to see that when you're in it or just freshly through it and everything is going through. But at that point, I had felt that I had done everything that I could to try and fix it, even though I hadn't had any conversations or said, this is what I'm going through and let's get help and whatever. But I was just doing everything that I knew how to try and make everyone happy. And when it wasn't happening, I was like, okay, I guess that's all that I know how to do. So it's time. And I was willing to sacrifice everything to finally go, I'm not going to live this life for the rest of my life. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes to try and figure that out because I'm not going to feel like this any longer. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to do that. And that was, like you said, having to face those people in our lives and the judgment and the potential rejection is that's the scariest thought. And going through it is, it can be excruciating. But when the dust settles and the smoke clears, it's, oh, the ones that are still here, they're the ones that are meant to be here. And they're the ones that are going to be, and they're the ones that see me for truly who I am. Because like you said too, when my first thing was to like get my story out. I was like needed to explain myself, because I'm like, I'm a good man. I'm a good father. I've been a great husband, and I'm not this guy that does this stuff. I'm not just like this cheater, that leaves his family. I'm not that guy. This is why. And that was my motive, was at first tell everybody so that they didn't leave me. They didn't reject me. But it was a defense mechanism and trying to protect myself. And all it did was keep the people that weren't supposed to be in my life for a longer length of time, until unfortunately they showed their true colors. And it was a way for us to part ways, and in a way that it probably should have happened a lot sooner.
Yes, and I'm such a big proponent for sharing our truth, even though it's hard, it's uncomfortable, because it is going to be a lot of times. And the way I have done it, it's I met with my therapist, and I'm like, this is what's going on in my life, and I'm terrified. I met with my therapist, I met with my energy healer. So I was reaching out for support, and this is what I want to encourage each and every one of you, especially if you go through such a hard situation where usually that type of experience, it's very judged and you might be rejected or abandoned and so on. Make sure you ask for support so you can get different type of perspectives and insights. And Kevin, because we are on the topic of healing the masculine within both men and women, first, I would like to really share with our audience what are some of the characteristics, some of the symptoms that you experience when you don't have your masculine healed within both men and women.
I think all of the examples that I shared within myself are all perfect examples of an unhealed masculine. Not being able to stand up for myself, being that people pleaser, that nice guy, looking for validation from everyone and everything outside of yourself. And those are telltale signs of an unhealed masculine. And it's something that you can't fill yourself. You can't truly find what it is that you're looking for, that feeling, that love, that connection, that acceptance. You can't find that by continuously seeking outside of yourself. You have to do the work around finding that within you, and where those thoughts and feelings and emotions come from that cause you to seek outside yourself, right? And where it comes from is the traumas, the experiences, our lives of our past, right? For me, it's validation seeking, looking for that love and acceptance that I wanted from my parents. And I have amazing parents, and they're still together. They supported me financially and helped me get to the levels where I couldn't have got to on my own. But looking back, there was ways where emotionally and nurturing wise, where there was some ways that I never got that. And it's not their fault. It's just they were doing the best that they could with the tools that they had, and all the traumas and everything that they've been through. So does that mean that I got everything that I wanted and needed? No. So that created those wounds, those masculine wounds within me, that I went to seek in other places, whether it was my coaches, whether it was in my relationships, whether it was in my jobs, looking for that validation, that love, that acceptance for who I was. But essentially, I was looking at it from the masculine, which essentially was my father.
Yes. So the wounded masculines, on from your experience, is mainly that we're seeking for validation, for the external validation, and then you are people pleasing everyone around you. So
Mhm.
you are not fulfilling your needs at all. And what is the opposite spectrum of that when you live with a healed masculine? How is that showing up differently in your life?
Yeah, I want to answer your question, and then I want to talk to the opposite end of the scale of the masculine, the unhealed masculine as well. So the way it shows up for me now that I've done so much healing work around the masculine, it shows up with confidence in more ways. There's always ways where I'm still working on my confidence and courage and being my truest self. But that's what starts to show up. It starts to show up this feeling of confidence, being able to speak my truth, ask for the things that I want, consciously lead myself by taking care of myself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Doing that in a space for me because this is what I want. And I'm giving to myself because giving to myself makes me a better person in all areas, which allows me to give it from the most conscious and powerful way to my family, to my kids, to my partner, to everyone else in my life. So taking care of myself is truly the most selfless thing that I can do. So many people think that it's selfish for taking that time, go for your workout or do something on your own, but it's truly literally just filling your cup up so you can overflow it into others. So that conscious leadership and leading yourself first, and then taking the lead and that have disagreements. And you don't have to please everyone else all the time. It's okay to not be okay, but to also not be afraid to speak up. I'm actually not feeling good today. I'm emotional or I'm struggling with this. And be willing to face that instead of being like that, having to force it. I'm fine. I'm good. Just leave me alone. Lone wolf mentality. So it's being able to stand up, fight for your rights, speak up for your needs, be that warrior when you need to, but also be able to be that nurturer and connect to your feelings and not be afraid to cry if it comes up or talk about your emotions, what you're going through. So that's, to me, is what's benefited me the most and through this masculine healing and what I believe, what I call the conscious masculine. And that's what I'm trying to create.
Yes, and I know so many people, you said, even having those difficult conversations, no, and sharing when you don't have a good day, when you don't feel well, to don't be afraid to communicate with your partner, with your kids, whoever you have around you, that you are not at your best, you're not feeling at your best, and to
Hmm.
not be afraid, I would say, of having uncomfortable and difficult conversations, because from my experience is the fact that actually that's when you create the most profound relationships with those around you, when you
Absolutely.
allow yourself, if you communicate from an empowered place, yes, and so not a victim or blaming the other person, but when you communicate and you enter that conversation, one thing that both sides, to maintain a good relationship, when you actually create the most profound relationships with those around you.
Hmm. And that's one of the things that, and I'm going to just generalize here and speak for most of the men, and it's a difficult, it's a difficult thing for them to do because we've been trained to keep our mouths shut and just get it done, suck it up. Don't, nobody wants to hear about your feelings or your emotions. Just suck it up and be strong. So that's what we do. If you ask somebody, you ask a man, most ask anybody in general, you ask a man, they're going to tell you they're good or they're fine.
Yeah.
Or that being busy was good. That's become an emotion or a feeling because there's some sort of metal that comes along with being busy. There's that validation and strength in being busy. But that's one of the things, is having those conversations. And that was the thing that changed. That was the thing that changed my life going through this separation, is having a conversation with another man where I opened up and shared what I was going through for the first time ever. And I could feel myself, the tightness and everything as I was doing that, going like, how is this gonna, I've already been rejected by so many by opening up and talking about my story, but now I'm saying how I'm feeling, and it was accepted and received for the first time. And I was like, wow, this is a whole new level, right? And that's when I knew my purpose, my mission, my a vision for me came where I knew that there was more men out there that needed this and needed it badly. And I was going to create a space to do that. And that's what I did with creating my men's group 3 years ago, and going into now coaching and mentoring men full time, and leaving my corporate job with the safety net. And because I believe in this so much, and having these types of conversations just to begin with, and then continuing through the healing part of it. But it's having those conversations first and just letting that release go and feeling that tightness all of a sudden just relax when you're held in a safe space by another man, like my arm hairs and I got chills all over my body thinking about it. It's super powerful.
Oh, and it is so powerful, because I would say we are both working in this healing space where we offer these sacred spaces for men and for women. And we just had a conversation recently how work it's so similar and so connected with what we do. And that's exactly how I feel when I held that space for women to be fully seen, accepted, and have this like sacred safe space to share anything and everything. There are no limits.
Yeah, no, 100%. And to there's such a power in just starting with that conversation and doing it in a space where you can be held in safety and feel safe to just let your walls down. And especially with someone who's been through it, with faced those challenges and knows exactly what the feeling is where you're at, because they've been there and they've been through it, and they're not going to judge you. They're not going to, make notes and tell you how to fix yourself or whatever, because a lot of times that's why I feel like there's so many people that don't want to say anything, is because they're going to get advice, or they're going to be told what to do, or someone's going to be like, oh, here, just do this or just do that, or downplay it, instead of just going, I hear you and I feel you. And there's such power in that. And the men's groups that I facilitate too, just the guys show up and they don't even know why what they're going to get out of it. And afterwards, and I'm telling you, every single one of them, they're like, that's nothing like I expected. Just being there with a group of men, supporting other men, and having guys that are all going through their same challenges, but being heard and accepted and seen for the first time, man, I can feel it in my chest. It's like one of the greatest experiences that I've ever been to.
And thank you for your beautiful work to help men connect more to their emotions, because I know I was even talking to my boyfriend recently, and this has been like quite a conversation that we have been having around emotions and vulnerability. And the same for him, like the majority of men, he grew up on not showing emotions, on not being vulnerable, on not expressing that. And I would say not even knowing how to express. And for him, having me on the other side of the spectrum, where I like communicate everything and I go very deep and we have this very profound conversation, has been, I would say, so enlightening for him. And it's so important who you surround yourself with.
Oh, absolutely.
And in what ways would you say for men that they, let's say they are very, and for women, because we said we are going to talk for both sides, men and women, how you can heal your masculine. In what ways can they embrace their vulnerability and just enhance their relationships with themselves and then with those around them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something too that as you were talking, I was thinking about how often there's a lot of men that are like, I don't want to be vulnerable and look soft and lose the respect and love from my woman or my partner. And there's probably a lot of women too that are like, don't want to see their man crying or emotional or upset or whatever. But that's all of that masculine wounding, right? So one of the things that I would say too is create time to connect. and have these types of conversations, the ones about the hard stuff or the emotional stuff, and create time and space for that, because that allows you to know what you're going into. And one thing that's helped me in the past, and I still do it too, is write things down. And when you create that time and that space, you know when that is. So you can be prepared and write this stuff down, and then allow for some space for both you and your partner to be able to open up and have these conversations. And whether it's with your partner, with your family, with your friends, whoever it is, create that time and space to do that. And, you know, if it helps you, write down the things that you want to say so that you can see them. And when everything does come up and it gets emotional, or your nervous system gets charged up, you can go back to that. You can go back to that list and that letter and read them, because the last thing you want to do is leave things on the table and walk away feeling worse than going into it.
Yeah, it's feeling worse than before. And what about if people don't even know what they feel, like how to express their emotions? Because I know even for me, before I started on my healing journey, I was so numb. Like I couldn't feel anything for years until I started to work on myself. So no matter what was going on in my life, I wasn't sad, I wasn't happy, I wasn't feeling anything. So if someone is numb, if they have been numbing themselves because of a trauma that they have been through, maybe, how do they even get in touch again with their feelings and being able to express that?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. And that's one of the things that came up even just as you were talking, is a lot of times when we're in that dynamic, that numbness, or in a relationship where we feel unsafe to bring up what we're going through, our partners might not be the best person to take that to, because if they're going through their own stuff, which everybody is, maybe they're not able to hold space for what you have going through. And it's just going to bring them into a shame spiral or fear or anxiety or whatever that brings up, having somebody to talk to outside of that. And that's why I am doing what I'm doing, and coaching men and helping men and women through these exact challenges, because the power of having a safe space outside of your relationship where you can take some stuff to process too really helps you let go and release and clear a lot of that, so that you can become more clear, so that you can start to feel more, and your mind isn't so cluttered and foggy. And now you can feel and go, oh, this is how I actually feel. This is what I'm going through. Or this is, now I see what's maybe causing this. And you can go back from a fresher perspective. I took my breathwork instructor training just last year, because over the last 5 years, practicing breathwork practices and somatic practices has been an absolute game changer for me to break through all of the surface and the layers of, I call, armor that's protecting my heart and protecting me from seeing what's truly inside myself. Those practices have helped me really get inside and connect to what is and what's going on and where it's coming from. I would say definitely those are a couple ways to start out with. Find someone to talk to, whether it's a men's group, whether it's a women's group, coach or mentor like yourself, myself. I know hundreds of other mentors and coaches and healers and practitioners that, if we don't connect or align, but you still want somebody to talk to, I'm about helping other people. So if talking to me isn't what lands or what connects with you, then I'll help you find somebody that does. So it doesn't just have to be me. It doesn't just have to be you.
Exactly.
We are connected in so many other ways. And it's about helping people on a with where they're at. It doesn't matter. Like the ego for me is not there, where it's like, oh, it's if you're not going to work with me, then go figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
So find someone that will listen and hold space for that, and be able to hear you and see you.
Mm, yes. And you also mentioned earlier how men have a hard time crying. And even so, women, they don't like seeing their men crying or being emotional or vulnerable. And what that shows also within the woman is that also the woman has their masculine wounded.
Totally.
And for the men, it would be the same, correct? That their masculine is wounded if they cannot express, cry, and show vulnerability in front of their woman.
Absolutely.
So how do we redefine strength, that what the society is telling us, especially for men, that being strong means not showing emotions, staying on the same length. So I would say operating from your ego. That's what this is.
Totally.
It's telling you. So how do we redefine the notion of what strength means outside of the societal norms?
I love that question. And something that comes up for me is if there's any sort of fear or judgment around, let's use crying as an example, as a man, if there's a fear or judgment or shame around crying, then that shows that there's a wounding there. There's a trauma there. Because what I believe in as the conscious masculine, that divine, that healed masculine, is someone who's not afraid to face what needs to come up. It's if you're emotional, if you need to cry, then being afraid to do that, that shows that there's some healing work to be done. What is it that's making you afraid to cry? Who's told you that it's not okay to cry? Because being sad, grieving, fear, all of those are emotions, just the same as being happy, being joyful, having fun. So when we're laughing, it's okay. Or if men get angry and they throw a tantrum, they're like, oh, that's just what they do. Those are no different emotions than being sad or grieving or being afraid. So not being able to face or express any one of those, if there's something like a fear or a judgment around that, then that shows you that there's some wounding, some healing that needs to be done around that. And that goes for men and women. If there's a woman that sees her man crying and just thinks that he's whatever, he's a wimp or a wuss, there's some work left in her. And why does she feel that she needs to be that role? That man has already faced in his life the one that says, boys don't cry, suck it up.
Yeah.
Do not show your tears or your emotions. Because now she's playing that role, but she might have had to be able to survive in her life going through whatever she's went through, where she doesn't trust men, or she was hurt by men, or whatever that looks like, right? For some reason, there's that feeling and emotion in her that when that comes up, she's not able to see that or hold space for that. That's,
Yeah.
I think that's like transitioning into the feminine, the female healing of the masculine.
So powerful. And I know when I was also doing a little bit of research about this topic and so on, I found some statistics that was showing that if individuals engage in healing the masculine, that it is going to increase 35% their self-esteem and their confidence. So it's like such a big number. It's such a it can, I would say, it can drastically change your life if you work on that and how you show up for yourself and for those around you. And Kevin, we are coming so close to the top of the hour. I cannot believe it, but we still
Goes by fast.
I know, so fast. When you have this great, engaging conversation, the time is flying. But if you could boil it down, let's say to three practices that you have seen that worked the best for you and for your clients, that men and women both, they could start today to do to help them heal their masculine, what would those three practices be?
I would say the first one that comes to mind is just acknowledging and accepting what comes up. If it's fear, if it's worry, if it's anxiousness, if it's insecurity, just acknowledging those and learning to accept that it's okay for you to feel those things, and then start asking why. Where are they coming from? So I would say that accepting, number one, right? Number two would be to face these emotions that are coming up, the feelings, the anxiousness, those feelings in your body that's coming up. And then number three is to start figuring out what it is that you want to do and start doing some things for yourself. Start taking time for self-love, self-care practices that you want to do that are going to fill you up, because you just spoke to it as the 35, just by taking care of yourself and healing these wounds, 35%, you improve your life by 35%. That is a huge number. So if you just start with those three simple things, I say they're simple, but start taking.
But not easy. There
That's
is
right.
a difference between
Totally simple,
simple.
not easy. Yeah, and start taking care of yourself, picking something and taking some time every single day to do what you choose to do, whatever that looks like. And that's going to start building some confidence. And yeah, it's really,
Yes.
that's the beginning.
And also what I want to bring up with taking the time for yourself and taking the time for your own self practices, I can tell you from my experience that it can be so hard when you are not used to it to do that. That's first. And second, you are going to be finding resistance from other people because you are doing that for yourself, because you are taking that time for yourself. And some people might even call you that you're selfish, which it has happened to me.
Of course, yeah, it happens.
And know that it's okay, because a lot of times when that shows up in your life, it also shows that other people are actually, it's more of a reflection of their own frustration for the fact that they don't have the capacity, the courage, the discipline, and so on to do that for themselves. And because of that, it can show up as a trigger when they see other people doing that. So know that you're going to find resistance.
Absolutely. And that's where that invitation to everything that comes up, if you find yourself looking at someone else and what they're doing and you're judging, that's a judgment against yourself, right?
Exactly.
If something comes up or anything that anyone else does, or even that you're doing, if it brings up a charge in you, whether it's an emotion or a feeling or a judgment, that's something that needs to be looked into. It's an invitation to heal that part of yourself and look a little bit deeper. That's where we come in. That's what we've done, this work and felt the power of it, and now wanting to help others do that as well. And that's how I went through it as well, is leaning on the people that have been through it and the ones that can truly help. And it's been the greatest investment that I've ever done, and that's investing in myself. And it can be hard to do when you've never been taught that it's okay.
Thank you, Kevin, for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And thank you to each and every one of you for joining us, for participating, for giving your heart and your time. And you showed up for yourself. We really appreciate you making the time to invest in yourself. And do not forget that I love you, I appreciate you, and I believe in you. And until the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to Spiritual Changemakers podcast. To stay connected and help us reach more people like you, please subscribe, follow, and leave a comment. Join our community of spiritual changemakers on social media to connect with like-minded individuals and continue the conversation. Remember, the power to create positive change is within you. Keep showing up as your best self, and let's keep the magic of change alive. Until next time.